Hello, everybody. Welcome to a space of African innovation and creativity. This is my beautifully talented band, and my name is Melo Mino. And we hope you can jam with us today and share the spirit of civic tech innovation and Jamfest. Let's go.
Pause. Silence. Let's reconvene in person again, to reconnect, to tell our stories, to listen, to disarm ourselves of preconceived notions, to reframe, to reflect, to unplug. Welcome to #Unplugged22. Take a victory lap. High five a friend. This is your moment, our moment. Together, we unplug to connect again and remember why we started. Let's evaluate our community and our digital impact with quality conversations rooted in context. We're about real connections that translate into real life action. Brought to you by Jamlab Africa and the Civic Tech Innovation Network.
Good afternoon and a warm welcome to Jamfest 2022. Jamfest is a premier event organized by the Journalism and Media Lab, otherwise known as Jamlab Africa, which is a project of the Wits Center for Journalism in Johannesburg, South Africa. Jamfest for 2022 is co hosted alongside the Civic Tech Innovation Forum. We thank you for joining us from across the continent and the rest of the world for this year's festival under the hashtag Unplugged but Still Connecting theme. My name is Adenike Aloba, and I work as the program director and managing editor for Dataphyte Nigeria. I am looking forward to facilitating the session titled Digital News Funnel Journeys, Revenue Strategies to Engage and Monetize the African Youth Segment. Before we go forward, I'd like to cover a few virtual housekeeping rules. If you can, please share and tweet about today's conversation on social media using the hashtag Jamfest 2022 and Unplugged 22. We would like for this discussion to be interactive, so please use the question and answer function for any questions directed to our speakers, as well as your comment and queries. Please be aware that this session is being recorded and will be publicly available on our various digital platforms in different formats. Our hope is that you will leave this knowledge sharing discussion with a better understanding of revenue strategies, monetizing the over 70% Africa youth population, and understanding, just learning from the wonderful panelists that we have in the room, learning from their journeys, taking lessons from their journeys, understanding the challenges that they have faced, and contextualizing that in your own space. So, once again, I say welcome. Before I go forward, I'd like to introduce our panelists today. So you'll give me about 2 minutes to run through the very impressive, profiles that I have in front of me. First, I'd like to introduce Soud Hyder. Soud is going to be making a presentation titled Lessons Learned on Attracting, Monetizing, and Retaining Diverse Customer Segments. Soud has a multinational experience in the formulation and execution of digital strategy across East Africa, the Middle East, and the United States. Having worked with a variety of organizations from NGOs to international broadcasters, he brings a wealth of expertise and a broad understanding of societal interactions with technology. Welcome, Soud. Next, I'll be introducing Julia Majale. She's going to be making a presentation titled Tuko Media Revenue and Monetization Strategies. Julia is a skilled digital media professional with over 80 years of experience in the industry, digital media editing, social media writing, and photography. Currently, the managing editor, Tuko Media Limited, a leading digital media company in Kenya, and managing a team of over 40 members with demonstrated results over the years. She spent over 5 years in a professional capacity as a digital editor, monitoring editor, and managing at Tuko Media Limited. Previously spent 3 years in a professional capacity as social media editor, online video editor, online sub editor, Standard Media Group. She's listed among the top 25 women in digital 2021 by SOMA. Women in News Fellow and Executive Master Student at Aga Khan University on Media Innovation and Leadership. Welcome, Julia. Next, I'm introducing Lance Witten. He's going to be making a presentation titled IOL's Approach to Attracting, Monetizing, and Rethinking the African Youth Segment. Lance is the editor in chief of IOL and Chief Audience Officer for the Independent Media Group. He's a media professional and storyteller with more than 20 years of experience working across radio, television, print, magazines, and digital media for some of the top media companies in South Africa. He currently specializes in audience development strategies. Lance is a board member of the UWC Media Society and the CPUT Journalism Advisory Board, and a member of the International News Media Association and World Association of Newspapers and News Publishers. Welcome, Lance. Next, I'll be introducing Ivor Prize. In the last 22 years, Ivor has won many global and local awards for his work in digital, print, and broadcast media. He's the co founder and editor in chief of the Food for Mzansi Group in South Africa, which has already won 12 international media awards, including Africa's Best Digital News Startup in 2019. He's also the inspiration behind the Sinelizwe Citizen Journalism Project, one of the award winning projects in the Google News Initiative Innovation Challenge. Other career highlights include a stint as a London based foreign correspondent and an Africa wide media trainer. He is the co author of two books. Finally, I'm introducing Kobus Louwrens. Kobus Louwrens is a multi award winning journalist and the author of two books. Along with Ivor Price, he co founded the Food from Mzansi Group, which boasts 12 global media awards. He cut his teeth as a journalist at Media 24 nearly 25 years ago. Other career highlights include a stint as general manager of East Africa Magazines based in Nairobi. He holds an MBA degree from Stellenbosch University. A very warm welcome to you all this afternoon. I am looking forward to your stories of success, looking forward to hearing the challenges you faced, how you've overcome that, or how you're managing those challenges. But to kick us off this afternoon, I'm going to be inviting Soud. Soud is making a presentation that is titled Lessons Learned on Attracting, Monetizing, and Retaining Diverse Customer Segment. Soud, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Adenike, and thank you, everyone who's tuned in. Fantastic afternoon, and hope we can all share little and big gems of how the industry is and how it's shaping up. So, when I was first asked to prepare this presentation, I mean, obviously the title that I was given is a little bit academic. I've tweaked the title. Well, I haven't tweaked the title. The content matters the same, but I've simplified a lot. So. I'll get over to it. So, can content be monetized in Africa? And I've taken a small journey, trying to compress this into 10 minutes and looking at different ways in which content has been monetized in Africa. And then towards the end, I'll kind of go through the opportunities and looking forward to further discussions with my co-panelists and members of the audience. So can content really be monetized in Africa? Um, Now, this is a picture taken in Nigeria somewhere around 2010. And it's your quintessential video shop in Nigeria back then. You go to the local markets, you want to get content, and Nigeria has a very vibrant content scene where they produce and distribute their own content. And the shop here is stacked with DVDs and probably video CDs ready for sale. Very interesting way of cataloging, but it worked. And yes, it was marred with problems. There was a lot of IP theft or piracy. But what eventually happened was the biggest production houses had joint distribution strategies, where what would happen is they would out distribute their the pirates. So there was no economic incentive because the price was just so low because they were producing and distributing the content at scale and made sure that they controlled the major pipes of distribution. Then it was uneconomical um, for your typical pirate or piracy operation to be able to compete with them, and they were able to sustain the ecosystem. Now, this is a picture from a matatu in Nairobi, and matatus are the most popular form of public transportation in Nairobi. So they are minibuses of different sizes, but there's a unique subculture in Nairobi where the matatus are very in tune with hip hop culture and heavily localized. So for an artist to be able to when an artist distributor releases a single or releases an album, the way for that song to be popular is mostly through matatus. And what would happen is the matatus would work with matatu operators would get content from a DJ or someone who curates content, mostly music in the local neighborhood. And it's, these are people who are either working at cyber cafes, up and coming DJs. But till today, this is the dominant form of distributing content because there is already audience. Nairobi has a population of just over 4 million people. Out of those 4 million, 1 point something, or at least half of the population commutes to and from work every day. So again, very interesting form of distribution, but it does work. There are people being paid. It's not perfect. There's a lot of piracy, but this is how people consume content in Nairobi, at least when it comes to music. Another example is Super Strikers, and this was started out of South Africa. Initially, it was a comic. I think they did a video play at some point. And the comics were distributed free of charge, mostly targeted towards the younger audience, people in schools, highly localized again. But they had a very interesting model in which the consumers did not pay for the content. Yes, it was comics. Yes, it was a niche, but it was able to spread to multiple countries, including my country, Kenya. And when they were running the prints in Kenya, Safaricom would sponsor the content. So it is a form of sponsored content. You'd have some brand activation in one way or another. But it's something that is scalable and worked through in multiple countries, and they were able to distribute millions, hundreds of millions of copies to different parts of the continent. It was a fantastic form of collaboration between enterprise, between content creators, distributors, and again, validation that some of these concepts that might seem novel or foreign are actually working in just different ways, and we just need to be paying attention to how they are working across the continent. So this is how most of the football fans in Nairobi would view your average English Premier League game. So that these video halls in highly populous neighborhoods, mostly in the low income areas. What would happen is they charge per game. So, it used to be around, I think, 50 shillings. Growing up, it used to be as low as 20 shillings. I think now it's probably closer to about 100 shillings, which is just below $1. And it works. There are fans who go every few days, every weekend. These halls are packed. And this is the way that most fans actually in Kenya view the content. Yes, there are people who've got access to streams. There are people who pirate streams. There are people who've got access to cable and the likes of DSTV. But this is a very different form of paying per view, and it works. Yes, maybe not all the revenue is going to the content owners and to the licensed distributors, but it is an example that this is working, and we just need to keep on paying attention to different forms of distributing content and for different audience segments. Now, I think we're all proud as Africans to see more African content on big streaming platforms like Netflix. It is an exciting time to be a content creator, especially if you're a video content creator. What the Netflix effect has created is, content that didn't have space to play in the budget of constrained media locally. And these are usually your boutique producers and whatnot, now have an international audience and a pan-African audience through the likes of Netflix. And Netflix is funding a lot of creators. There are pros and cons, but it's another way of sustaining a content creation operation, especially if you're doing video. Now, I've given examples that cut across the socioeconomic spectrum, that cut across different audiences. And the reason I chose these examples is because they're very unique, they're validated, and they're all in Africa. So the opportunities are there for consumption-based pricing, sponsored content, aggregation and joint ventures, tip jars and donations, and localized distribution infrastructure that is adapted to the local population. Content is always king, and audience is queen. So for content creators, you just have to figure out who your audience is. Are they willing to pay for your content, and what model of monetization are you going to use? And Africans have been paying for content for well over a decade. This has been validated. The problem lies with the distribution infrastructure at scale that allows content creators to easily and effectively reach paying consumers. I think the opportunity is there. It's just that the platforms haven't, and there hasn't been like a native platform made for Africa by Africa that has scaled across the continent. Still early days, but there is a way to make sustainable content and media operations in the continent.
Thank you very much, dude. I enjoyed it was good to kind of just look through what has been working. Sometimes we're just inundated by what is not working, and it's good to take a pause and look at what has been working. But I do have one question before, I get to the next speaker. And how do we marry the kind of dichotomy that exists between entertainment content and news content? There seems to be a sense of, if it's news, then we shouldn't pay for it. If it's entertainment, then that's for my entertainment. If it's news, you are offering a service you should be offering. There appears to be some kind of dichotomy between those two concepts. How do you navigate that?
So I think with the advent of the web, the habits have been built that you go to a website and you don't pay for it, and you view the content there for free. And that's because that content was heavily being subsidized by either print operations or other revenue generating operations by news organizations. But it costs money. Now, 10 years ago, your average African would not shy away from paying money to buy a newspaper. So I think that habit, kind of, there is an element of perception. News has to be paid for, whether it's subsidized by the public broadcaster and the government of the day, or taxes, or some other institutional organization, or news organizations have to make their money. So I think nothing. It can't happen in a vacuum. And then I think what the audience needs to realize is, for them to support their preferred news organizations, there has to be an element of revenue generation, whether it's going to come through donations or subsidies, or the consumers actually buying the product. And if the product is good enough, probably the consumers will buy it.
Very much, Jude. I'm going to come back to you later in the conversation around which you think is the best strategy in terms of financing. But now I'm going to move over to Julia, and she's going to be speaking to the experience of Tuko Media around revenue and monetization strategies. Hi, Julia.
Hi, good afternoon. Okay, my name is Julia Majale. I'm the managing editor at Tuko Media. Tuko Media is one of the leading, if at all, the leading digital publisher in Kenya. And we publish all kind of content, from current affairs, politics, human interest, entertainment. We have a YouTube page that also focuses a lot on human interest stories and stories that Kenyans want to tell to the public. My focus today is going to be a lot to do with monetization, because that's the topic, of course, and how we have managed to get revenue from for the last seven years that Tuko has been operating. So if we move to the next slide, yeah, that's my These are some of the numbers that Tuko is proud to have. We have 30 million monthly page views, and this is going to come. I'll explain this later when I start explaining about the programmatic revenue. We have 30 million monthly page views on our website. That's from Google Analytics. 8 million monthly readers, and we have around 840,000 YouTube subscribers. If you can move on to the next slide. This is also going to, I'll also speak about this when I get further, how this plays a role in how we monetize. If you can see there, you can see Tuko is number 4, and this is it's a graph that was released by Newsweek and showing that we are top web publishers on Facebook. This was according to August 2022. Sorry, just the next slide. Those are also some of our Facebook social media numbers, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And again, this is going to play a role in what I'm going to explain later. So how do we monetize content? We have a sales team in the office that they go out and sell and do direct sales, look for advertisers, pitch our website to advertisers out there. But also we get a lot of our money from programmatic, a lot of our revenue, and we monetize all the content that we produce via programmatic. This is a high level breakdown, so I'm going to break down just a bit deeper into how we do this programmatically. So if you see the next slide, I'll just do a bit of explanation of what programmatic monetization means. It's a process of trading adverts automatically using ad exchanges. The process happens without your direct involvement. So all you need is to set up technical integration. And from this chart, you can see a simplified chart of how programmatic monetization works. Overall, every time a user visits your website, when they click on a story or they click on an advert, an ad request is sent to your ad server via dedicated supply side platform, that's the SSP. It is then fed into an ad exchange and matched to the right advertising request. All that happens within a fraction of a second, so it's not something you can easily follow up, but once it's automated, it works very easy. This process is also called a real-time bidding. Then when you move to the next slide, just take a look at how various programmatic channels work. We'll start with Google. And I think most of you know what AdSense is. It's like the most basic, way you can get revenue from Google. This is where you receive demand coming from Google Ads, and some are also unauthorized accounts. However, the rates on advertising are usually cheaper on Google AdSense compared to AdX. This is where we have a lot of premium content that also have higher CPM. CPM is clicks per minute. Lastly, we have pre-bid. These where all the bids are collected from ad networks, and then they're enabled and selected for the highest bids. I understand this is a bit it's a bit technical, but once you go through and you read through and you understand, you'll be able to figure out how it works. So pre-bid works in a way similar to open bidding, but no commission is taken from the publisher. If we move on to the next slide, these are also there are kind of ads that you can run via programmatic channels. That's display, video, and native. And I'll explain a bit. The most obvious one is display. These are the standard adverts that you see or most on the websites that you visit. We also have this on our website, of course. However, the recent trends show that you can yield much more by enabling video demand. So in order to do this, you need to enable a video player on your website. That way, if somebody clicks on that video, you get revenue. There are also various companies on the market that offer such services for enabling video player to your website. So you don't have to really create some of these videos on your own. And then when you're choosing the video player, you'll also be offered to either select in-stream or out-stream video monetization. In-stream video ads are appearing inside the actual video content played on your website, pretty much like ad breaks on TV. However, out-stream videos, on the other hand, only reflect the advertisement and start playing when clicked or when you hover on top of that. Native ads, this is also a banner styled as your article. It can either be static banner or a banner that prompts to app install, or even a video banner. The rest of the native ads are usually higher than display, but the demand is usually a bit low compared to the rest. Then if you move on to the next slide, you're also able to monetize through your Facebook pages, social media pages. That's Facebook. For us, we do Facebook and YouTube. There's something called instant articles on Facebook. It's a feature where you can read articles directly on Facebook without it redirecting you back to the website. Although this is going to be disabled soon, but we might be able to make revenue from this. And you can also use this through YouTube. YouTube ads, of course, it depends also a lot on what's happening at that time, how the number of clicks you're getting, the number of subscribers you're getting. But remember, I mentioned before about the numbers on Facebook. The more numbers you have on Facebook, the more you engage your audience on Facebook, the higher you're going to get revenue from this. Then if you move on to the next slide, some of the other ways that you can also generate revenue is by direct, which I'd mentioned, that we have a team of sales of representatives who go out to sell advertising spaces on our website. But you can also manage to build a community. And if you build a community and they come to your website or they come to your channel to get specific content or niche content, they're able to pay for this. Or they can also donate. You can check something that's called Patreon. We have this where we get donations from our fans. Let me use that word. Then we can move on to the next slide. Sorry, just one slide back. Oh yes, I wanted to explain something. If you sell your ads directly to advertisers, you can sell your ads directly to your advertisers by mobilizing a team of sales representatives. This is also a good solution for bigger companies. But if you're a small company, then you can have maybe one of your officials, maybe an MD or something, to offer such placements to the C-level executives. If your content is unique, as I said, then you believe it's valuable for your audience, you can ask them to do donations. You can ask your viewers for donations. We have Patreon, we have GoFundMe, and also YouTube has a subscription tiers, which can be offered to your audience. For us, we also do get a lot of revenue from the tier 1 countries. Those are like US, UK, Canada, and Australia. Their CPM is a bit higher. So we tend to generate content that appeals to that kind of audience because we get a lot of revenue from that. Lastly, how your content and monetization strategies must also go hand in hand. So what I'll say is content is key. And if you have good content, chances are you're going to get a lot of revenue from your content. Then you can also approach businesses that may be looking for your audience to advertise. I think my final word will be, when it comes to programmatic, the key success is to keep your technical integrations. Make sure you have very good tech that can easily tap into these programmatic channels. That's all I have. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Julia. Quite interesting to hear, just how Tuko is monetizing its revenue strategies and monetization strategies. One question before I go to the next speaker, and it's, how does competition affect this strategy? And by competition, I mean the media space competition. Competition in the media space. How does that impact on your strategy, where you're competing for viewership with other media organizations? How does that impact on your strategy, and how do you think around that? What's your thinking around that?
For the first thing is actually the content that you're producing. You have to make sure you're producing content that is unique, content that not everyone else is producing. That way you are engaging your audience, and they'll always come back to you for more, or they come back to you specifically looking for that content. We're also very good with how we engage with our audience on our social media pages. So we have like a social media team that's dedicated to dropping comments on our Facebook posts, just having banter more or less. That way they feel like they belong, they feel like a community, and they always come back to our content. So I think that has sort of worked for us.
Okay, thank you very much, Julia, and we'll come back to you with more questions around how you manage these strategies and how that interconnects with your content, the kind of content you produce, and that. But now I'm going to move to Lance, and Lance is going to be speaking to IL's approach to attracting, monetizing, and retaining the Africa Youth segment. Hi, Lance.
Hi, Adenike. Thank you very much for the invitation, and thank you everyone for your attendance. I really want to echo what Soud is saying. It is very difficult in an African context to try and monetize content, despite the fact that audiences are used to paying for content. They're not used to paying for news content. I think what's very important to understand is that audiences are incredibly discerning. And we as media houses, we as news media organizations are no longer playing in just one space, right? You're no longer just playing in the news media economy. We're actually playing in the attention economy. And this is the kind of thing that as Chief Audience Officer of our group, I try to get across to all of our teams, and as Editor-in-Chief of IOL, impacts on our content decisions that we make. So if we look at the history of paying for content, people are used to, as I was saying, used to paying for a newspaper. You're used to going to a DVD store and renting a DVD. You're used to paying your TV license. When it comes to radio, radio has always been free, but you've always been served up as a captive audience. You're always served up advertising within that particular medium. With the dawn of digital news media, it's become a lot more difficult because audiences are already trained to receive their news for free. So when I say we are playing now in the attention economy, because all of Africa's youth, the youth population, the International News Media Association recently launched a report called The Relationship Between Gen Z and the Media. Gen Zers are now 23, 24, 25 years old. They are young adults with earning potential. They are the market that you are after. This report shows that audiences like this don't really need to get their news from you. They're consuming a lot of their news on social media. So we as the news media providers can no longer see ourselves as the sole publishers. And in that way, we need to carve out spaces for ourselves in order to attract that audience's attention. So when you stop thinking that you are a news medium and people need to pay you for your news and start thinking along the lines of attracting a market share in the attention economy, you then can start getting a lot more creative with your content strategies, with your social media strategies, and with your other strategies. So when we look at the attention economy, what does that mean? It means that I am now in competition with Spotify. I am now in competition with YouTube. I am in competition with Netflix, with Disney Plus, with HBO Max, with Apple TV. Those are now my competitors, where before my competitors were all news publishers in the news space. As soon as I make that mindset shift to help to understand that I am now playing in the attention economy, I'm looking for a slice of my audience's attention that impacts now on my content strategies and impacts on the strategies I take to serve up that content to my audiences. So how do we do it as IOL? Well, the most important thing when you consider that is that you now have to have a much stronger focus on your acquisition of audience from social media. That is where Gen Z is playing. They are living on TikTok, they are living on Twitter, they're living on Facebook, they're living on Instagram. Okay, Facebook to a lesser degree. I think the older millennials among us are still attracted to Facebook. But TikTok is where you want to be, right? So we have now embarked on a plan to TikTokify our news streams. So we're serving up content that the audience likes on a platform they enjoy in a medium that they are most likely to consume and engage with. The moment you start building a more engaged audience, the more you can start monetizing that audience. And it's not necessarily a direct monetization. It's not necessarily a fact of, oh, well, TikTok's going to give me 300,000 Rand a month because my audience is consuming content on TikTok's platform. What it means is that the more I am able to gather that audience data, the more I'm able to pick up on my audience's habits, and particularly their acquisition habits, how they flow down the funnel from my social media into my news platform, the more targeted I can become in the kind of content I can serve them up. And how do we make money off this understanding? Well, one of the ways, in addition to programmatic advertising, direct sales, one of the other monetization aspects that we started working towards is reader revenue, getting users to actually pay for your content. And then it means, like Soud said, likewise he said, it means that you need content that people are willing to pay for. Am I producing video content at the level of Netflix? No, I'm not. So can I expect my users to pay what they pay for Netflix? Absolutely not. But what I can do with this engaged audience is start working on content marketing campaigns, on, like Soud mentioned, with Super Strikers, start doing content marketing that allows us to start monetizing the press releases and the product placement that traditionally would have been the mainstay of young journalists, right? New journalists coming in, interns coming in, you write most of your content of press releases. We've put a stop to that. We don't publish press releases at all. In order for a press release to be published as is and to get a share of our social media's audience's attention, you need to pay us for that. So that's been a pretty successful monetization campaign for us at IOL. So that is me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lance. I like the fact that you kind of landed us on the conversation of the attention economy and how that's really the field where we play. But I do have a question, because there is such a thing as the rigor of journalism, for instance, especially in a world of fake news and misinformation and disinformation. How do we balance that skill? How do we catch up, with time, with grabbing the attention while still paying attention to fighting misinformation and disinformation and making sure that they're getting verified information that is true? How do we balance that skill?
Yeah, it's a very good question, Adenike, because we have to remember that while we do play in the attention economy, we also play in the economy of trust. So we need to understand that because everyone is a publisher, they are the rules. Nobody plays hard and fast to the rules anymore, right? I can say something on TikTok as a fact, and I can dress up in a doctor's outfit and pretend to be a doctor and say, you need to get only 4 hours of sleep every day. And it could be perceived as trustworthy information. So our role as media houses becomes so much more important on social media, even though Gen Z is a lot more discerning on social media than Gen X was, and that Gen Y was. Gen Z is a lot more discerning an audience. They're able to pick up fake news very quickly, but it behooves us as media organizations, as media entities, to be able to curate and sift through all that dross so that we can give the most accurate and most factual content available, so that our audiences know, hey, here is a trusted news source, and they also happen to be playing in the space that I like to consume my content. They must be the place to go. So we set ourselves up as that destination for them.
Thank you very much, Lance. I feel like we may have to come back to that idea about Gen Z being more more discerning. But before I come back to you on that, I would love to listen now to Ivor and Kobus, who are going to be talking about Health for Mzansi, how they've been attracting, monetizing, and retaining the African youth segment. Hi, guys.
Good afternoon. Thank you for the opportunity. Health for Mzansi is a new experiment, part of the Food for Mzansi group in South Africa. It all started 4 years ago when Kobus and I launched a little publication in South Africa called Food for Mzansi. It's an agriculture news publication. In the last 4 years, Food for Mzansi has grown into this country's biggest agriculture publication, in essence competing with two titles who are both older than 100 years old. What Food for Mzansi has done different to go from startup to the biggest in its niche, is to find a new audience that previously advertisers and media companies, I guess, did not deem worthy enough of being spoken to. In the agriculture vertical space, they were too young, they were too black, they just weren't sexy enough for traditional media until 4 years ago when we came along. So based on Food for Mzansi's success, we are currently experimenting with a publication called Health for Mzansi, following all the same principles and the lessons we learned in the agriculture news vertical in the health space, which is obviously very new to us. It's specifically built for Gen Z, and to do that, we had a total rehaul and overhaul of the publication. If you go onto healthformzansi.co.za, you'll see that it looks a bit like Instagram. It's specifically the way we built it. Health for Mzansi, in short, is not a publication. It's about diseases. It's about how food and habits can take a person from surviving to thriving, specifically speaking to a younger audience, which we are now beginning to monetize. The publication, we build the audience first, monetize the audience second, before we monetize, I guess the brand. It speaks to basic health concerns. Health is obviously a big topic for Gen Z at the moment, leading to change of behaviors, getting them away from over-the-counter medicines, more into the natural medicine space. Yeah, Kobus?
Yeah. Just to give you an idea of what makes the content approach of Health for Mzansi different, it's not luxury beauty, it's beauty from within, for instance. It's not overly overly medication driven. It's more lifestyle and natural medicine and even traditional medicine driven. It tries to present for the first time in South Africa a more inclusive picture of health and of ordinary people's relationship to the healthcare system also in South Africa. So we do, the idea is to cultivate this audience, which we have done and are starting to monetize in a couple of ways, by presenting content that people can't access anywhere else, or at least not in the specific format that we are doing it. It's health information that's approachable, that has a specific human face to it, always factually correct from a trusted source, but often presented in unconventional formats, very entertaining formats, very light read formats. It's always, there's a strong family and community relationship that's represented. So we're trying to speak to people who are finding them where they live, and it's always very human to human presented.
In terms of the ideas and the execution thereof, we find that not only are we carving out a new audience, a new health audience, because in the South African context, health publications has always been for skinny white women. Our readers don't look like that, but anyway, we're also carving out a new generation of specialists, and focus on what happens beyond the doctor's room. It's published in English, but in many ways it's multilingual in terms of the vernacular expressions, etc. that we use. The editor is out there. She's also not the stereotypical picture of health. You can see her on TikTok, Health for Mzansi's TikTok. Meaningful conversations. In terms of how we monetizing it, community engagement, mall talks. There's a popular, well, I can't say popular, it's becoming increasingly popular, the Health for Mzansi podcast called Sisters without shame, rebranded soon to Health for Mzansi. And then just realizing that health is a journey, it's not a destination ad. There's a lot of funnies, there's a lot of top tips as well.
Yeah, and I think where the difference comes in, which is refreshing to the industry that we are selling to at the moment, is we're presenting a sort of cultural segmentation and a almost a lifestyle that we are packaging that is kind of shaking up the traditional way of that people, companies in the lifestyle segment in South Africa are used to dealing with their audience. So we're taking an audience to them where we know quite a lot about how they live, where they are, what's important to them, and their attitude towards health and improving their health. And that is what we are selling to advertisers and to people at events, including audience-funded events. And that is how we've been managed to monetize this segment in South Africa.
Okay, thank you, Ivor and Kobus. I mean, the way you guys were sliding, and it kind of just it gave a sense of just how interesting your content is going to be. But I do have one question. It's the challenge between producing something niche and general, where you have many general practitioners, many people saying on their website you can get health, you can get food, you can get agriculture, you can get education, you can get everything. And then when you are producing something niche, speaking to a particular sector, a particular audience, or how do you navigate that, especially when you think around competition for those audiences? How do you navigate that?
Yeah. We with health, we practice the same that we've that has helped us make Food for Mzansi the biggest in its niche, and that is we have a very clear sense of who the audience is and what they get from us, what we're trying to give them. And we've got these audience avatars for all our publications, and all our journalists have a very clear sense of who these people are. For health, we've got 3 specific people that we write to, and as part of the questions or sort of the process that a story goes through before we publish it is, why would this specific person, like one of the avatars called Majale, why would Majale care? And that helps to basically cut through all the different options where you could go wrong, and to just present something that really fits your core audience. And that also helps us then to define this audience in a very vivid way, to go out and sell it to people who are trying to reach it.
Thank you very much. Everyone, the insights have been fantastic. I've been learning a lot. I've been taking a lot of notes that I'm going to take with me and, reflect on. But there's a question I want to ask, because I'm throwing this question out and I would like to ask everyone to comment on it as quickly as possible. Soud mentioned something about perception and how there's a lot of need for perception change amongst the audience to say, hey, news has to be paid for. But it appears as if there's need for perception change even in the media, where we begin to think less of our audience as people that we deserve and more like customers. What are your thoughts around the idea of pivoting, in media perception from, oh yeah, we deserve the audience, we're telling you the truth, to these are our customers and we have to engage with them differently? Let me start with Soud, and then, we'll just get to everyone.
So I come from the school of thought that content is the ultimate product. So whether you're building a VOD platform, you're building apps, you're building, the product is content, and the product needs to have an audience. So unless the audience then takes center stage in your creation process,
Right.
is you could potentially be making. I mean, you it's too much of a risk as a content creator not to tailor your content to the audience. I think the audience is very important. The perception of the audience is very important. And if the audience feels that they don't want to pay for content, then maybe there's a problem in terms of how that content is packaged or formulated. So the advice I'd give to practitioners is maybe you need to go back to the drawing board and figure out what it is that will take the audience to pay for it, or someone else to pay for it, for that matter.
Thank you, Soud. Julia, let me layer on that question for you. I want you to answer to the question, but I also want to layer on it for you. What differences are you seeing between your organization and more traditional media organizations, especially when it comes to how you think about audience?
Okay, my answer will respond to both. I think what we've learned as Tuko is understanding our audience, and we use a lot of analytical tools to figure this out. So you get to understand what is it the audience wants, or what is it they're very much interested in, and then you produce that kind of content for them. Of course, there's that balance between what they need to know and what is it they want. So you have to find a way to balance. You give more of what they want, but you also give them what they need. So start by learning the audience. Identify your audience, understand what is it they want. And if you're giving them what they want, of course, they'll keep coming back for that. And they're your customers. I think someone has said, once you understand what your customer wants, then you're going to be able to give them that. And they're not going to find this anywhere else. So they'll keep coming back for more. And with that, you've sort of built loyalty. So it's very hard to lose them, I think. But it does take time to get to that point.
Right. Okay. Okay. Ivor and Kobus, what are your thoughts around, especially because I know South Africa has a lot of traditional media organizations who have been operating for years and years. And, what are you thinking around, just that in media perception, where we need to change how we think as media practitioners ourselves?
We actually feel very lucky to be a startup, because we get to leave all the baggage behind and start afresh. And one of the things that we did was starting off with we've got a real sense of purpose, and our audience feels that we're kind of what's the word, a very very much purpose driven business. We see ourselves as pursuing a greater good for our society, and that people feel that sense of mission. And it also helps us to always have the audience in mind, and the value that we're presenting to the audience in mind. So we actually don't feel the temptation of pushing content towards an audience that we feel they should be getting. We're always thinking, how is this serving them, and how is this making South Africa a better place?
Thank you very much. Lance, what are your thoughts around the subject of, changing media perception itself about its audiences?
Yeah, I think there's a part of our industry that feels like we are doing this content, we are providing a service to you, so you need to pay us for it. And in many circles, there is a belief that audiences have contributed themselves to the state of the media. We're unfunded because we can't get revenue because our audiences are not willing to pay for our revenue. When in fact, if you do start, as each of the speakers has mentioned, when you do start thinking about putting your audience first and seeing your client or your audience as your clients, your audience as your customers, right. The audience in essence is your currency. It does tend to shift our perceptions. I think among our generation, we certainly understand that, but the traditional media houses that back us sometimes struggle to come along with us on this.
Right.
So I definitely think there is a need for a shift in that section, for us to stop thinking, well, we've built it, they must come, right. And rather start building products that people want
Right.
and create content that people.
Thank you so much, everyone. It has been an interesting 1 hour. I wish we had like 3 hours to exhaust this because I have questions around product thinking. I have questions around the impact of development funding and how we think about how we produce media. But, I'll keep all of that and maybe come back to you guys at another platform for these questions. But we have 1 minute and I want like a one-line quote, like a one-liner quote from each person, um, just speaking to, sorry, yes, sorry. I was asking for a one-liner quote speaking out to media practitioners. What is the one thing you want them to live with? And we have to make this rapid fire. So I'll go as I see you on my screen from Ivor to Soud, uh, to Lance, and then to Julia. So let's make this rapid fire.
I guess my parting words would be the magic in creating media for future generations is to embrace startup thinking. You know,
Right.
be brave, but think like a startup, not like a traditional media company.
All right. Thank you, Soud.
Put the audience at the heart of your business, and with that, no matter what changes, with Lance was talking about TikTokifying and whatnot, there'll be so many other platforms. But if the audience is at the heart of your business continues.
All right, Julia.
I'll say change is constant. So if you want to stay with it, be with it, understand how monetization work, how to build the revenue, I think you have to constantly change, be agile, get to learn, get to understand what other people are doing, what is new, what's coming up next.
Right.
So yeah, change is
Thank
constant.
you. And finally, Lance.
Thanks, guys. I think apart from putting your audience first, I think creating engagement, making sure that you are engaging with that audience at all times. Speak to them, listen to them, understand them, and react to them. Like Julie was saying, be agile. React to that audience through
Right.
that consistent engagement.
Right. A big thank you to you all for being here and for sharing your insights. This session is ending. However, we invite you to join the next session starting at 4 p.m. CAT on this Airmate platform for a fireside chat hosted in collaboration with Fringe Graph in Kenya, which promises to be inspiring and inform you on how data driven storytelling is transforming the newsroom. Keep up to date with Jamlab Africa news and subscribe to the newsletter. Follow the link to subscribe. I think a link is being shared in the chat at the moment. Follow the link to subscribe, which it'll be posted in the Q&A chat session. That's it from our end. That's it for this conversation today. Thank you so much to all our panelists again for your preparations and insightful input. From myself, Adenike Aloba from Nigeria, and from the Jamlab Africa team. Thank you and keep well. See you at the next session.